Marie and I, well, hello everybody, and happy holidays, happy December. Marie and I got together today to put our stockings together, fully finish them into actual stockings, and I had a couple of viewers ask if we would show that process, and Marie and I are not professional stitchers. We are very amateur. So this is not a professional tutorial, but we will show you how we put them together today. Okay, so first we cut around each stocking. The directions say 1/2 inch. I always do 3/4 of an inch because if that is too small, it makes it so hard to sew together, and you can trim it off later. So we marked with a pencil, and we actually used a ruler, and we made a little mark with a pencil all the way around, and then we cut along the edges of the marks. If you are not planning on lining your stocking, then you don't have to be so precise with your 3/4 inch. You could just kind of eyeball it. Like if you're never going to use these stockings as actual stockings with stuff in them, you're just going to hang them up for decoration, it wouldn't matter. But because we're using this as the template to cut the lining, we need to know how big that is so we know how big of a seam to take on the lining. So,
because if you stuff that orange down in that toe and it leaks, you're going to be pissed.
So we did 3/4 of an inch all the way around and then cut them out, which was the scariest part. Except at the top, I did a whole inch because that part's going to fold down inside and I can trim it off later, but I didn't want it to be too small. So that's what we did first. And then we used the stocking as a template to cut out the back. This is going to be the back of the stocking. So we laid it down right sides together on the backing fabric and used the stocking as a template and cut it out. Just be really careful when you're cutting it out that you're not don't be trimming off a little bit of your stocking as you go, because you don't want to make that any smaller. And then for lining, you could just use regular fabric for lining. I like it's called oilcloth. It's usually used as a tablecloth. This is a white that has a floral imprint on it. I found it at Joann's. It's on the rolls that hangs on the wall by the upholstery fabric. It's water resistant and it's washable. It is not waterproof. So if you put, I don't know.
Don't shove that orange down there.
Yeah, something liquid is going to soak through this and onto here eventually. But if chocolate just melts on it, or you got some sticky candy on it, you could stick a washcloth down inside, or turn the stocking inside out and wash it off. So that's what I used on my kids' stockings 30 years ago, and it has held up all these years, and it worked great. So I put 2 layers of that together, and for the lining, I put the right sides together with the fuzzy side out. I had 2 layers of it. And then I laid the stocking right side up this time and used it as a template and cut out 2 layers. Don't cut that wrong. I had to think about it. If your stocking is right side out, then these need to be right sides together so that will be the inside of the stocking. I tried to cut it out with this turned over backwards. That's not going to work, because then you'd have the fuzzy part would be inside the stocking, and that would be silly. All right, that is as far as we have gotten. So we will, through the magic of video, we will turn the camera off and show you the next step when we get that done. So next we pinned the cording to the front of the stocking, and we tried to get it right as close to the edge as we could.
Not gonna focus. You can see my pencil line right there.
And you could just put the back on and sew it all at once, but since we are amateurs, I felt like it'd be better if we sewed that cording on first so it's not going to move. I just sewed. I didn't worry about getting close up to the edge. I just sewed it. So those 2 are hooked together. And then I will sew the back on, and then I know that cording is not going to move. And now we'll sew the back on. Okay, we pinned the backs, flip it over, to the front. is all we did next. And then Marie sewed hers already. It's just showing your belly. I should show your whole body so you can see. Yes, Marie is very pregnant, having a baby in 5 days. All right, Marie, show us what you did to it after we sewed it.
You gotta clip all the corners so that when you turn it inside out. So you had to cut, I cut half of this off, the whole thing.
Because we don't need all of it anymore.
And then you clip it so that it will, and I only clipped it to here.
Because the top part doesn't have any curves, so it doesn't need to be clipped.
Yep.
We're talking about these little,
Maybe you'll see them better on this side. I don't know.
that right there, so that when you have a curve, it will lay better when we turn it inside out. Okay. You're going to turn it, do you want to turn it inside out right on camera? We have already turned it inside out, just to make sure that we didn't sew the cording into the seam or anything before we, which is a good idea. Turn it inside out and check to make sure your seam looks okay before you trim the allowance off and clip the corners, the curves.
Ta-da!
Hang on, it won't focus on it up there. There we go. So cute. All right, on to the next step. All right, I'm trying to figure out where we left off. Next, you would take your 2 pieces of lining, right sides together. Oh, because I have it pinned shut. So that the washable side is on the inside. Oh, and I forgot to say that when we sewed these together, we used a zipper foot so we could get right up next to the cording. But on this one, you're going to need to take a 3/4 inch plus a little bit, because you want this to be just a little bit smaller to fit inside your stocking. So sew around the edge of that, which this has already been done, and then trim it so it's pretty small, at least half of that off, so the seam allowance is pretty small. And then you stick your hand in it and stuff it down inside your finished stocking. Sorry, did you?
Yeah, I got it.
Which I have already done with this one. You can see that I have already stuffed it down inside. And then fold the edge of this one over and the back over, and fold the edges of your lining over so that they all match right where you want them to match. Fold the cording down inside between the lining and the stocking. And when you get it all just right, then pin it. Oh, and make a little the loop is just a piece of fabric folded in and then folded in, and then we will sew right along that edge to make your loop. And I forgot, you should sew it to this back piece before you sew it together, and I forgot. So now I'm going to have to sew that with the hand sewing. I usually, with a needle and thread, do a blind stitch around this to attach the lining to the stocking, and then at the same time I would sew through this loop to make sure it gets on there tight. But Marie
Was lazy.
just didn't want to do the blind stitch, which is a pain. Hand sewing is not very fun. So this barely fit over the arm on my sewing machine, so she could get in there. She put gray thread in the top thread and white thread in the bobbin, and she sewed across here. You can probably see that better with the sewing machine. And then she changed her top thread to red and sewed across the back. She couldn't get very close to the cording, so she kind of had to stop. And then she hand sewed with a needle and thread this part where it has to run across the cording and kind of get attached to the cording. So hers, oh, you should show it, is all finished.
Ta-da!
Oh, let me turn it so we can get your whole, oh, that was probably bad.
Like that.
No, it's not. We should probably go back. All right,
Done.
hers is finished. Yay! Marie went home an hour ago. And I am finally finished with my 2 stockings. I think we started at about 11, and I can see my watch, 11 a.m. and it is 5:45. So that's how long it took us. Turn it over so you can see the back. And then I did, you can get under a light so you can, I did a blind stitch around the top of mine to hook the lining to the stocking. And oh, I'm so glad that part is done. I do not like this part of making the stockings. I am happy to have that part over with, and so thrilled that I was able to get 2 stockings done this year for my daughter-in-laws, Hannah and Lauren. Bye-bye.